Welcome back, deckheads, to Cast a Commotion, the podcast where we're catching up on all of the flesh and blood beginner things we need to catch up on. This time, a very special time to me. This is when I knew that I was going to dive all in on flesh and blood. This was The Calling, Las Vegas, 2021. An absolutely magical Friday. I had never been to Las Vegas before. Driving into that city, knowing that I was about to play an amazing game over an amazing weekend with world-class people. I would even meet the likes of Michael Hamilton that weekend in game. All of those memories behind me. What we're really talking about, I guess, is Tales of ARIA. The reason that was so relevant was the Tales of ARIA pre-release was that weekend. Convinced me this game was the future. So this time on Cast a Commotion, Tales of ARIA. As I said, I was driving into Las Vegas, seeing the lights just sprawl across one of the most flat cities I have ever seen in my life. And I had no idea we were about to see Corsham, the crossroad of elements, even whatever the hell it's like. I can't believe I forgot that card's name. I would see that beautiful pink hue, the auroras, and the introduction of elements. The biggest thing we got in Tales of Aria, and in my opinion, the strongest set we've seen so far. There are many arguments to be made about how many living legends are in and out of this set, but nothing quite shaped the meta like seeing these elements come into the game. Entering that arena for the first time, seeing the three elemental heroes exhibiting earth, ice, and lightning, having to read everything so quickly in such a panicked fashion, the excitement of what is this Runeblade, even though at that point in time you could say Runeblade fatigue was starting to set in. Who is this? I hated him at the time and still kind of did for a long time after. The Guardian being introduced. What was really happening? I have a very disorganized thought process when it comes to this because I don't know what I want to talk about. I should stick to the basics so we can get through these sets and I can really start to deep dive into the topics of the game, how to play, theories, heroes, how to beat, all these other kind of guides I want to do. I just get so excited talking about Tales of Aria. It also was, like I said, the three elements were introduced. Earth, ice, and lightning. Earth and ice being the most ground-shaking. Ice being one of the hardest control features I've ever seen in a game. It's like, people think counterspells are annoying, but having to reroute your whole turn and every single action around something every step of the way while even being disrupted further by that ice is just... It's fatiguing. Something to note about those cards, the Earth, Ice, and Lightning, those can only be included in a deck if that hero has the specific essence. General notes about elemental cards. You can play elemental cards in your deck even if they have a fusion ability of a different element. If you have an elemental card that can fuse for Earth and Lightning, like Fulminate, right? You don't need to be Earth and Lightning to have it in your deck because the card type is only elemental. But it's likely, unless you have both of those elements available to you, you won't be able to get the full effect of the card. But maybe all you're after is one part of the card, who knows? So elemental class cards, like elemental guardian cards, can only be included in the deck if it's both elemental and guardian. So many of the elemental guardian cards right now are strictly limited to Oldhim, Grandfather of Eternity. Your hero must have the essence of Earth to put Earth cards in your deck. They must have the essence of Ice to put Ice cards in your deck. Your hero must have the essence of Lightning to put Lightning cards in your deck. Going over some of the rules groups in Facebook, Twitter, and the Discord, some people just joining the game, even today, as of the recording of this episode, I answered this question a few days ago to a negative response, but the point being, some people think that elemental cards can just be included in every elemental deck. Like, they think the word elemental and think that it's fusing all Earth, Ice, and Lightning. Not true. Those are all individual types, elemental cards. lightning cards, ice cards, earth cards. They're all separate things. They need to have that word on there. Don't just add the word on there. Like you may have heard in earlier podcasts, don't fucking add words to cards to make them make sense. Just try your best to work with what you have on the card, and if it needs to be clarified, judges are available. This was also the introduction to the offhand. I was incredibly excited to learn this, and then incredibly disappointed because while I was first playing the Tales of ARIA pre-release, I did not like Oldhim. I could not figure out how to make them work. Everybody was reading cards wrong. Obviously, it's a brand new card game at that point in time, and it had the biggest crowd it ever had before. It was just confusing. I didn't like Oldhim, so I wasn't excited to find out that the only offhand items were available to Guardians at the time. But it's starting to change. You're starting to see more one-handed items and a bunch of weird things being added to the game, like fans, knives, all this kind of stuff that can be wielded in the offhand. But this was the start. Tales of ARIA was the first set we saw the offhand cards come into play. An example, because if you're just going through this podcast, reading articles, and just ramping up to play the game, would be like Rampart of the Ram's Head, Rotten Old Buckler, their Guardian equipment that are in the offhand, which means you can have a one-handed weapon and an offhanded equipment. Things to note about using an offhand: you can't use a two-handed weapon and an offhand. I just said that. You can only use the one-handed and an offhand. So just the smaller hammers. You can start with at most one offhand weapon in the weapon zone. You can't have two offhands. You can't go full shield mode, as funny as I think that would be. And you can defend with offhanded equipment as long as it has a defense value. That's really all there is to know about offhand equipment. So that's the only new card type, actually, which is awesome because this set was already complicated enough to learn. Just getting to know when you could use those things wasn't that complicated because, like I said, you can throw it up there, you can defend. If it had any other effects, you just read the card. Moving on further into the set, fusion was the big new mechanic. It's not as widely used as I would like it to be. I'm personally fusing quite a bit, and I have one build that I'm kind of working on that really relies on it. But it's hard to do. It's an additional cost. So let's go over it. Fusion says that you pay an additional cost to get an additional effect, right? So we'll use Entwine Lightning, okay? It's an elemental action that's an attack. It costs 1. It has Lightning Fusion. What that means is, as an additional cost to play Entwine Lightning, you may reveal a lightning card from your hand, okay? So in addition to paying the 1 pitch you have, okay, at the same time, you also could reveal a lightning type card from your hand. If you do, the fusion is complete. It then says, if Entwine Lightning was fused, it gains Go again. And then it's an attack 4, defense 2 card. Okay. So you can see there, as a normal attack, it's 1 for 4. Not particularly great, and it only has 3 defense. But if you fuse it, it gets to Go again. You can't reveal a card that you're using to pitch to play the card. You pay resource costs before additional costs. That's just a note in the comprehensive rules. You may play the card without paying the additional cost of the fusion. It's not a requirement. I am very happy to see many new players jumping into the game, and there are going to be a lot of questions. This may be one of them. Yeah, it's not a required cost. It's just an optional additional cost. You can't reveal multiple cards to the fusion unless it states you can. So you don't get the effect multiple times. So if I were to reveal 2 lightning cards, it doesn't give me double Go again. That doesn't work anyway, but you know what I mean? Like, you can't reveal multiple cards for the fusion unless it's allowed by the card itself. You can't reveal a card that doesn't fit the criteria, right? Fusing an ice card to an earth fusion doesn't make any sense, right? It says earth fusion. Why would an ice card work? It just doesn't, right? The biggest thing that I did, and I remember doing this multiple times, and this was when I was trying to make Briar work, but I just didn't quite understand, is I kept trying to fuse my elemental cards to the lightning elemental fusion, right? So the elemental card with lightning fusion, I would just reveal an element. Fuck, I can't talk, man. An elemental card, and that's not how that works, right? Like I said earlier, don't add extra words to cards. Don't complicate things. It doesn't say lightning on the card as the type. It's not a lightning action, right? It's nothing like that. So it doesn't work with the fusion. Defending with a card is not the same as playing the card, so you can't fuse while defending with a card with fusion. unless it's like a defense reaction that calls for a fusion as an additional cost, right? Just keep that in mind, right? You're not going to get the fusion effect unless it specifically requires it a part of the cost of playing the card. There are a few defense reactions that Oldhim uses that specifically do want that earth or ice fusion. That is the most complicated thing that gets introduced into this set, is the fusion. I feel like I was just a word salad trying to over-explain how that works, but I have just passed the level 0 judge thing, and I want to start getting better about... I may not want to participate as a judge, but I definitely want to help people understand this game better. I guess if I'm really to summate all of what fusion is it's an additional, optional cost. Whatever the card asks for, be it Earth, Ice, Lightning, or whatever's in the future, the card type that is in your hand must match that type in order to gain the additional effect. You cannot use the card you pitch to pay for it in this way. I think that's as simple as that's going to get. That's the most complicated mechanic, I think, in the new set of Tales of Aria. One of the biggest menaces of that weekend was I think it was Blossoming Spellblade. So LSS didn't quite word Briar correctly, and you could trigger Briar's you could get her embodiment of Earth, which made your cards defend better by dealing damage to an opponent. And what Blossoming Spellblade said was, if it was fused, whenever this deals damage to an opponent, you may banish a non-attack card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play it this turn as though it were an instant. But more importantly, when you attack with Blossoming Spellblade, if it was fused, deal 1 arcane damage to the target hero. And then I had opened up a Shock Charmers, and I just thought, if I just activate everything into the Blossoming Spellblade, it would technically hit the opponent like 6 times, and I would get... it was just... and then there was Bramble Sparks. All kinds of cards in the set that just made it a nightmare. And then I was blocking one massive attack for like 9 with 1 card or something. Like not literally, but it was just a mess. But God, Fusion was a headache for everybody, and the judges included. But the judges struggled with more than that in the beginning, because obviously we were all coming from different games and had our own ideas on how games worked. Moving on from the nightmare that was Fusion, it's Channel. It's a new keyword to Tales of Aria. It's basically like I'm personally right now using Channel Mount Heroic quite a bit, so we'll use that as the example we talk about. Pitches for 1, which means it's a red card. It costs 3, and then it specifies in its type that it is an Earth action aura. All except for the Earth we've seen before. We've seen auras come into play and be used throughout Welcome to Wraith to now. So we're very familiar with non-attack actions that are auras. The only difference is this one's an Earth type. Okay? Its first ability is Go Again. And then it has the line of text, attack action cards you control have +3 power. Okay? So that's what it does. It gives all of your attack action cards +3 power. Pretty powerful. And then it says at the bottom of it, Channel Earth. Okay? And what that means is at the beginning of your end phase, you put a counter on Channel Mount Heroic. It's an age counter for technicality, but you just need to know you put a counter on Channel Mount Heroic. And then you destroy it unless you put an Earth card from your pitch zone on the bottom of your deck for every age counter. So the first turn it comes into play, you get its effect, and then at the end of your turn, you put 1 counter on it. And unless you can put 1 Earth card from your pitch zone on the bottom of your deck, it goes away. You destroy it. But if you can successfully continue to put 1, 2, or 3 Earth cards into the bottom of your deck, you can keep Channel Mount Heroic out for quite a while. It just depends on your build and how you're able to spend the resources. It defends for 3, kind of a side-by note. But also, cards with the keyword Fusion are not classified as that element. So if a card says, for Channel Mount Heroic's purposes, if it says Earth Fusion, that's not an Earth card unless it says, like Channel Mount Heroic does, Earth Action Aura. Earth Attack Action, right? It has to say that word Earth on the bottom of the card to satisfy the channel. You choose the order of the cards that you put on the bottom of your deck. It's just like putting them on the bottom like a pitch. It's just what you do, okay? And this is the same for Channel Thunderstep, Channel Lake Frigid, and Channel Mount Heroic. For every counter on it, you have to have a matching elemental card in your pitch zone to put on the bottom of your deck. Otherwise, it gets destroyed. Okay? That one, see how much simpler that was than Fusion? That was so much more simple than Fusion, I feel like. I do not believe even the next one isn't that bad. Essence is the next ability to appear in Tales of Aria. All Essences is basically telling you what your hero is capable of. It exists only on elemental hero cards as far as I know. And it just tells you what that hero specializes in. So I keep talking about Briar because she was she was the deck that I used for the pre-release of Tales of Aria. Not who I play nowadays from Tales, but I'm just going through my beginning experiences with Tales to try to relate to newer players. So Briar, the Warden of Thorns, is an elemental Runeblade hero. Okay, so she is elemental, and she's a Runeblade. So she can use elemental cards and Runeblade cards. On top of that, Briar has the essence of Earth and Lightning. All that means is you can have Earth and Lightning cards in your deck. You are now permitted to use elemental cards, Runeblade cards, Earth cards, and Lightning cards. That was the big uproar over this set. It's just, it was so big of a pool, right? Like with the previous set Monarch, we introduced talents in general. So you could have a Shadow Runeblade. Well, those could use Shadow cards and Runeblade cards. But now you have elemental heroes who have multiple essences, and they have elemental, Runeblade, Earth, and Lightning cards available. It's a huge card pool. You might think that's overpowered. It gives them a lot of options, yes. But at the end of the day, your deck can only be 80 cards in Classic Constructed. So it's not all powerful, it's just more flexible. To kind of drive that point home right now, the Guardian that I'm playing right now is Oldhim. Well, Oldhim's not showing up quite as hard as Bravo the Showstopper in the current Pro Tour that's happening at this time. I may have my numbers wrong as of updates, but when I checked, Bravo was showing up in force. And that's because, yes, Oldhim is more flexible, but Bravo's more specialized, and he can get those dominated attacks in much harder against opponents that really can't afford to take those on hits. So, different tools, different styles. It's what's appealing about this game to so many people is you really can just pick a tool and carve your way into this game. Just notes about elemental heroes. You can play with generics, elementals, Runeblades, Earth, Lightning, all those kind of cards. You can't play with any type of ice card. Just note that, like if you're playing Briar Warden of Thorns, and likewise for all the other heroes. If you don't see that essence on your card, you cannot play those types of elements. You have to have the essence of Earth for you to play Earth cards, but any elemental hero can play elemental cards with Earth Fusion, right? You just wouldn't get the fuse. Just remember that those are going to be non-bows. Other keywords we see coming back into Tales of Aria are Arcane Barrier, once per turn actions, Blade Break, Dominate, Go Again, all of the greats, right? Reload, Spell Void. We're going to see these recurring themes in every set. I do want to point out a very specific card. Oh, I hate how they printed this card. Corsham, Crossroad of the Elements, the card I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. Once upon a time, inspired adventurers from across Wraith would seek the fabled land of Aria. All who made it through the veil, unbeknownst to them, found Corsham, the dumbest printed card I've ever seen in my life. Okay? It is a landmark. It is a fabled landmark. It's like the Great Library that is from Monarch. We didn't really go over that card because there wasn't anything too crazy about it. I'm only going over Corsham because of how it's printed. Okay? It costs 1. It's an elemental action, which means only elemental heroes can play it. Okay, it's a landmark, and that has its own thing that I'll talk about in a bit. It's just that it's printed like, when you arrive at the legendary Corsham, go again. Whenever a hero reveals a card, they gain a resource, a health, or their next attack this day gains +1 power. The next action card they defend with this day gains 1 defense. At sunset, depart Corsham if no hero has gained any of these. Why? Why did we print it like that? Why is that the official printing? Why in Unlimited did we not fix this? I hate it. I hate it. I can't make that more clear. The way this reads in reality is it's legendary. You can only have 1 Corsham, Crossroad of the Elements in your deck. It has Go Again. And it says, whenever a hero reveals 1 or more cards, you choose gain 1 life, 1 health, or your next attack this turn gains +1, or the next attack action card you defend with this turn gains +1 defense. All right. At the beginning of your end phase, if no hero has gained resources, health from a card effect, And no card or token controlled by a hero has gained power or defense increases this turn. Destroy Corsham, Crossroad of the Elements. Okay. I think this card is much more powerful than people think. I'm really trying to work this into a deck, and I have seen decent results against current assassins. I don't know how good it is overall. I really want to use it. But let's talk a little bit more about it. You can't pitch Corsham, right? You can't pitch the Great Library of Solana, right? You can't pitch those landmarks because they don't have a pitch value. There are a few cards in this game that you just cannot pitch out of your hand, so be careful about that. It's an action card, so it costs an action point to play it, which means it's not an instant. You can't do anything crazy with it. As I said earlier, landmarks have a special rule. There can only be one landmark in the arena at any given time. When a landmark enters the arena while another is in play, the previous landmark is destroyed. This rule has never seen play. I'm sure it has. Correct me all you can, please God. I have never seen this occur. Landmarks are A, fabled, and B, really specific. Landmarks in the arena stay in play like auras, in their own little zone. If a card is revealed to pay additional costs like fusions, and then like you choose the next attack this turn gets +1, the current attack does not gain it. It's your next attack after that, right? So be aware of that. It does say the next attack action card. When one or more cards are revealed as a cost, it will trigger as part of the resolution of that effect, right? If a card or ability reveals a card as an additional cost and as resolution, it triggers twice. But like for example, I was trying to use it with Blessing of Deliverance, and that reveals 3 cards at one time. Corsham only triggers once because that's part of one trigger, right? It says one or more cards are revealed. Gaining resources from pitching a card doesn't count as gaining resources for Corsham's destruction event. You have to gain the resource, health, power, or defense from card effects, like resolution, triggered, activated, or static abilities, right? Interesting to note, Oldham is who I'm specifically testing this deck with right now. Titan's Fist says as long as there's a card with 3 or more power in your pitch zone, it gets +1 power. That keeps Corsham around. You have a token in play that has gained power during the turn. That's all it cares about. Rampart of the Ram's Head, when you pay to give it a defense, that keeps Corsham around. Final Spring Tunic keeps Corsham around. It just has to be an effect from a card, right? Because pitching isn't from the card, it's just a mechanic of the game. If you have continue effects that increase power or defense, like Channel Mount Heroic, that does not prevent Corsham from being destroyed. Your card doesn't gain the power as far as Corsham cares. It's because it comes under your control with the effect already applied. It basically reads that all of your cards already have this power, right? They don't gain it on the field or in the arena. So power and defense has not seen under Channel Mount Heroic. If the continuous effect becomes active after the card comes under your control, then the power may increase from the effect, and that would prevent Corsham from being destroyed. Weirdly enough, and this is where this game shows that it's a little bit newer at the time of Tales of Aria, right? It's only the the 3rd or 5th? Is that the 5th set? Jesus. While Channel Mount Heroic, being a constant effect that applies to cards, does not give cards power for Corsham, cards like Choke Slam from Crucible of War that say if an attack card would gain power, it instead gains 0 power if the Crush effect is enabled. Somehow that stops Channel Mount Heroic. All right, you can still play power modifier cards, but attack action cards would just gain 0 power instead. I'm too new to the judge system to really define how this happens. So Corsham looks for a card that comes under your control and then sees that while it's in your control, did it gain power? I guess is how I'd explain this. So it doesn't care that it has more power, but when the card comes under your control, it just has more power. But the Choke Slam says cards can't gain power, right? Attack action cards can't gain power during the next action phase. And I think that the Choke Slam effect checks. This is so hard. I would just say active effects check for cards that come under your control. Choke Slam checks cards before they come into your control, is how I would define that. I'm so sorry I do not have a better way to describe that. Okay? But just know that effects that say your attack action cards gain plus power, like constant effects like that, apply that to the card as they come under your control, but it doesn't give them when they're under your control, so Corsham doesn't see it. But Chokeslam just says it can't happen. So when it's coming into play, it just says it can't gain this. It has the ability, cannot gain power, right? It's weird. It's weird. It's weird. I'm getting too hung up on that. I'm getting way too hung up on Corsham. That gives me an idea for deep dive episodes later on. I'm going to cut this shit out. We got to move on because this is all of the introduction. I'm going to eventually, once we get caught up to the new sets, call this section Back to Basics. And that's basically what we're doing right now, Back to Basics. We're just covering a set, its release, what's coming out, and kind of what you can expect. Okay. So moving on past that, we're already on the topic of Briar. I've already talked about how she has the essence of Earth and Lightning. Let's go over the heroes. Why not? We're still here. Let's go over the heroes. So with Briar, her abilities say, whenever an attack action card you control deals damage to an opposing hero, create an embodiment of Earth token. Whenever you play your second non-attack action each turn, create an embodiment of Lightning. What are these, you might ask? The embodiment of Earth gives your non-attack actions +1 defense. So basically, that has been errated to say, this can only happen once a turn. It just makes your non-attack actions a little better at defending, which is fantastic. Alternatively, when you play a second non-attack action in a turn, you create an embodiment of Lightning. What is that? It says the next attack action card you play gains Go Again. Note that unlike the Quicken token, this does not affect your weapon. Okay. Intellect 4, 20 and 40 life for young and old. Well, young and adult, I guess. The first ability includes hitting with the attack action as well as dealing arcane damage. So if somehow you give a card the ability to deal like a little zap of arcane damage with Bramble Spark or whatever else is in this set, that counts as the damage. It just cares that the attack action was the source. 1 instances of 2 damage still only creates the 1 embodiment of Earth. That's what I'm saying, is you're only going to get the 1. Playing a non-attack action card is that we're an instant still counts as playing the non-attack action card. Playing something as an instant doesn't relieve it of the rest of its attributes. It is still a non-attack action card, so keep that in mind. You still create the embodiment of Lightning token when you play your second non-attack, even if you already control one. Right? The reason for that being, right, you can control multiple auras. There are cards that care about that. But at the same time, even if you do have 2, 3, 5, 10, 50 embodiments of Lightning, they all crack the second you play an attack action card. And they all apply Go Again to that card. But as previously mentioned in earlier podcasts, you can only gain 1 action point from Go Again. Multiple Go Again doesn't stack. So it's not an issue. But it does matter. You do need to keep track of those auras to maintain a perfect board state. The embodiment of Earth is an elemental aura with non-attack action cards you control have +1 defense while defending. And at the beginning of your action phase, destroy embodiment of Earth. Note that the +1 defense only happens while it's defending. That matters for cards in the future past this set, called like Pulse Wave Harpoon and a few other things, right? The defense only cares about existing while the card is defending. And then the embodiment of Lightning, like I said, is whenever you play an attack action card, destroy the embodiment of Lightning and the attack gains Go Again. Sorry to kind of hurry through that one, but I know I've already said it. So we'll just continue on to the next hero. We've talked about Briar quite a bit. The current nightmare, in my opinion, in the whole game is Lexi Livewire. She is an elemental ranger hero. And I have been pinned against what I have to assume is a cliff face by a million arrows over and over again by this hero. It's just a non-ending barrage. I know I might be alone in this, and I do want to cover how-tos and stuff later and do deep dives on research of heroes later once we get into that and once we get caught up to the sets so I can start actually developing interesting content. But do note, you're really going to have to pay attention to these matchups. These are all about risk assessment, on-hit assessment, and it's she is very, very good. She has the essence of Ice and Lightning. So because she's an elemental ranger who has the essence of Ice and Lightning, that's generic cards, ranger cards, elemental cards, Ice and Lightning cards. Her ability is once per turn action. Turn a face-down card in your arsenal face up. If it's a Lightning card, your next attack gains Go Again. If it's an Ice card, create a Frostbite token under target hero's control. Go Again. She has Intellect 4 and Life 20 and 40. Things to talk about are you may turn face-down cards face up, even if it's not a Lightning or an Ice card. The turning the card face up is part of the cost. Doesn't care what it is, just part of it. It needs to be a face-down card in your arsenal. If you turn a card that's Lightning or Ice, and or ice, I guess I should say, you get both effects. So if you have a Pulse of Volthaven, which is both ice and lightning, your next attack action card gets go again, and they create a Frostbite. The Frostbite, however, is new to us. In this podcast, it is new to us. So we'll talk about that. A Frostbite token is an elemental aura with cards and activated abilities you control cost an additional resource. At the beginning of your end phase, or whenever you play a card or activate an ability, destroy the Frostbite. So basically what that means is you're giving your opponent a nice little fuck you, right? It's the next thing you do is going to cost an additional resource. Is that a defense reaction? Is that your Findall Spring Tunic, you say? Is that your weapon? Whatever. It's going to cost one more, one time, and then it destroys. At the end of the turn, it goes away anyway. It's not permanent. So, doesn't sound that bad. But again, as I've covered in earlier podcasts, this game is balanced on 1 to 2 points in one direction or the other at the highest levels of play. So, could make the difference. Other than that, Lexi is really simple. As a hero, it's just the cards and on hits and effects that get played by Lexi and the Ranger class that are the problem. So just know that hero is really simple to read, and there's not a lot to go over for Lexi, but can be used to devastating effect. Next up is the hero that I was cursed and blessed with, Oldhim, the Grandfather of Eternity. I have this little rule, right, to stop me from just spiking really hard in this game, because otherwise I will just pick the best hero and play it constantly, and I'm here to have fun and explore a new game. I basically only play heroes that I win or are given the promo. And I, at one of the events, had one in Oldhim, so that's why I ended up playing. For my Constructed, in the pre-release, I hated this character. I couldn't figure out how to make him work. Oldhim is an elemental guardian that has the essence of earth and ice. So now we've covered all 3 sides of that triangle in Tales of Aria. Earth and ice, earth and lightning, lightning and ice. This is the final wall of it. You can use generic, elemental, guardians, earth, and ice cards in this deck. Oldhim's ability is surprisingly underestimated, I would say. I've had too many people underestimate this defense reaction. So it is a defense reaction as a hero ability. It is always available to you unless it's turned off for some reason. But it's just what he does. He just has a defense reaction as an ability. Note, for cards like Command and Conquer or cards that say you cannot play a defense reaction, you can still activate defense reactions like Oldhim. So it's a very powerful effect. It costs 3 resources, and it says, if an Earth card is pitched this way, prevent the next 2 damage that would be dealt to Oldhim this turn. If an Ice card is pitched this way, the attacking hero puts a card from their hand on top of their deck. So you have the Earth side, which is more protective, the Ice side that can slow down an opponent or stymie their advances. Notice it doesn't say you can't do both. So you can't pitch a card if there's no cost to be played. You can't pitch a card for a cost if there's already sufficient resources available to you. These are solid rules in the game that are part of the fundamental gameplay mechanics of Flesh and Blood. So be smart with how you pitch. You must pitch the card as part of the cost to pay for the ability to gain the effect. So having an Ice or an Earth card in your pitch zone that you pitched for a different cost does not grant the effect. So if you have an Earth card in your pitch and then you pitch another generic card to pay for this defense reaction, doesn't work. It won't give you the effect. If a card pitched is both Ice and Earth, you gain both effects. Likewise, if you're able to pitch an Earth and an Ice card for this effect, you get both effects. You may only activate the defense reaction during the reaction step. So unfortunately, a lot of the on-attack damage that comes at you, like deal 1 arcane damage when this attacks, all this stuff, that all happens before this is even available to you, so you have to find another way to deal with that. But the prevention effect lasts until the end of the turn. It doesn't need to prevent damage from the current chain link. It doesn't care. It's just a 2 damage shield that's in front of you from now on. When you activate this and get the Earth effect, you now will prevent 2 damage that happens to Oldhim. Not from one source. Not from one source. Just in general, you have a 2 damage buffer now for the rest of the turn. Very good against those little daggers. That prevents all types of damage, including attacks, arcane, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't prevent loss of life, though. So toxicity, I shouldn't be talking about that card yet. It's not something we've covered. Things like that, like fuck it. Loss of life isn't prevented with this. Just know that. The attacking hero picks what card from their hand goes on top of their deck. So it's not like random or whatever. If you pitch an ice card for this effect, they get to choose what card they put on top. Though a good Oldham player will make sure it's always the last card in their hand so they don't get an arsenal. Both players can respond to this ability with reactions and instants. It's a reaction. That means it goes on the reaction layer. Both players get priority during this step. So in response to the ice part happening, the attacking player can just use the attack reaction in their hand if they have it and have the resources to pay for it. So be aware of that. All right, so that was the most complicated of the heroes. Oldham really is the most complicated of the heroes because that is just, it's the first time we've seen a defense reaction on a hero. It has a lot of if and or buts about it. It has questions to be answered like, yes, it is a prevention shield. It doesn't apply to one target. Yes, you can still react to it. All this kind of stuff. It's not like it doesn't have like some kind of time stop ability or anything. Like you can respond to it. This is the part of the introduction to a set that I would go over a few notable cards. I spent a lot of time on Corsham as a notable card. I could talk about the Rosetta Thorn, but I'm quite confident that card's about to go out with Briar as a living legend as of the time of this podcast recording. I guess what I should do, instead of going over all of what I think are the big cards of this set, I think I'm going to change it up, because every card in this set has value in one way or the other. It's just, how are you going to use the elemental boons to your benefit? What I'm going to go over is the fact that this is the set, I think, with the most bans in it. All right, so let's go over the ban list. Something we've not talked about at all, really, except for Drone of Brutality, I think. I guess we could have went over Plunder Run in the past as well, but the point is, the first card to talk about is Awakening. That's an Elemental Guardian card that is banned in Classic Constructed, just to let you know why it's banned and kind of like what to look out for in the future. I do want you to be able to play the cards that you're investing in, buying, to play in decks, to have fun with your friends. These are key things to look out for, because there's a reason this was banned. It's way too powerful. So Awakening is a card that pitches for 3, which means it's a blue card. It's like an auto-include in any Guardian deck. It costs 2, so it's easy to play. It's an Elemental Guardian instant, so it can only ever be played to Elemental Guardians. It has Earth Fusion, which means as an additional cost to play Awakening, you can reveal an Earth card from your hand. The problematic part is this. If you have less health than an opposing hero, you create Seismic Surge tokens equal to the difference. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop reading there and just explain what a Seismic Surge is, because we've never gone over that before. A Seismic Surge token is a Guardian aura with, at the beginning of your action phase, destroy the Seismic Surge. Then, the next Guardian attack action card you play this turn costs 1 less resource to play. So this says, if you have less health than the opposing hero, create Seismic Surge tokens equal to the difference. So if you are at 30 and your opponent's at 40, you create 10 Seismic Surge tokens. That means your next Guardian attack action will cost 10 less resources, potentially making some of the strongest, largest, most devastating attacks in the game free. And then it has the gall to say, if Awakening was fused, instead create twice that many Seismic Surge tokens. So the gap doesn't even have to be that large. If you are 4 life less than your opponent, you are now creating 8 Seismic Surge tokens. It's that alone is just saying you're going to get a free attack next turn no matter what. That's not even the worst part. That's not even the worst part of Awakening. It has a second part of the card that says, search your deck for a Guardian attack card with cost less than or equal to the number of Seismic Surge tokens you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Not only does it have the gall to say you're going to get a free attack, it then lets you choose what the attack is. That basically says, I'm going to let you beat me up for a second so I can play this instant and absolutely ruin your day. It's not even a catch-up mechanic. Guardian didn't need that help. It's just, I hope if you've been listening to the early episodes and talk about and have heard me talk about how down to the resource some games can get, you understand why that's banned. The next card is Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning is banned. It comes in the Rainbow of Pitches, and it's a common card. It's a lightning action that says, first off, it costs 0 to play. And it attacks for 1, 2, or 3, depending on what color it is. And it says, whenever a lightning or elemental action card would deal combat damage this chain, it deals that much +1. In a deck that likes to attack like 4 or 5 times, this is a free 3 damage on top of an attack you've already played with Go Again. It affects all instances of damage, including if an elemental or lightning card says deal 1 damage, right? So a lot of the Runeblade arcane effects that say on attack deal 1 damage, well, now it deals 1+1. Playing non-attack actions close the combat chain, so that would disrupt ball lightning. But if you've ever played against Briar, you know that's not happening. They open up wide and go full red line. It doesn't apply to non-attack actions that were played like an instant, right? So like combat chains can stay open in that scenario, but still, it's not enough to justify why ball lightning exists. It does have a defense value of 0, and it can defend. That's just something to note. That's a unique portion of this card, is that it had defense of 0. So you could defend with it. It just wouldn't usually do anything. Just note, ball lightning in all forms is banned. The next card from this set that's banned is the Duskblade, the most disgusting. I got legitimately mad at this game when I saw this card. It's no secret by this point in the podcast cycle, if you've been listening at any point in time, you damn well know I'm a Dorinthia lover to the core. I love Dorinthia. The Dawnblade, one of my favorite things. Great art, great card, oppressive force. I love it. Well, the Duskblade is a Runeblade weapon that is a 2-handed sword. It says once per turn action for 1 resource, attack. Okay, that doesn't sound too crazy. But it says whenever you attack with the Duskblade, if you have played an attack action card and a non-attack action card this turn, you put a +1 power counter on the Duskblade. Contrast that to Dorinthia's requirement of you must hit twice with the Dawnblade in order to get the +1 power counter. This doesn't even require you to hit. It just says if you've played an attack and a non-attack, which by the way, Runeblades are very good at, you put a +1 power counter on it. At the beginning of your end phase, if you haven't played an attack action card and a non-attack action card, you remove all +1 counters from the Dawnblade. You don't have to attack with the Dawnblade to prevent the +1 counters from being removed like you do with the Dawnblade. You just have to have played an attack and a non-attack. It doesn't even have to be part of your plan, and it could just get passively stronger over the game. I don't know how they didn't catch this in playtesting, that by the end of the game, and by the end of the game I mean like 6-7 turns in, this thing is attacking for 10 damage for 1 resource. Like almost guaranteed. It's just insane. I guess 9 would be the technical number there, but the point is it's so strong. It doesn't have to hit at all to get the counters. It doesn't have to hit at all to keep the counters. You just have to be playing sorry. I'm just mad. I'm just mad thinking about this card. I don't have to be too mad because it was one of the worst things that has ever happened to a Flesh and Blood set. This was banned as a Majestic card and a cold foil capable card. This was banned before the set came out. That's how big of a deal this was. Other than that, cards that are banned from this set are Pulse of Eisenloft. That is an Oldhim card right now. It can be probably something later on, but right now Oldhim is the primary user of it. It's a blue card that pitches for 3. It costs 2. And it's an Earth, Ice, Defense reaction. It's a legendary card. You can only have one of them. And it says Earth, Ice, and Elemental action cards have +1 while defending this turn. Which means that if you played it later in the chain, all of your other things got plus defense or whatever. It was just crazy. And then it itself defended for 6. So it was close to Time Walk power. It would just shut down one attack entirely. Since defense reactions can't defend in the defending window and must be played in the reaction window, you have to pay for Pulse of Eisenloft's cost to play it, obviously. And it's a defense reaction card, not an action card, so it doesn't actually get the +1 defense from its own ability. The defense reaction part of this card is not why it was banned. It was banned because it has the Earth and Ice types on it, and it made fusing an Oldhim perfectly easy. Fuse all of your massive attacks with it at all times perfectly, and still have a Time Walk in your hand when you needed it. It was... I don't agree with the ban. A running theme you'll find with me is I don't agree with a lot of the bans. I feel like they just slow down Living Legend, and I feel like we have too many heroes in the game right now. I don't know if that's true or not. We have to have more of a discussion about that. I'll have to interview people and see how they think and how they feel and really get real thoughts on this later on. But for now, I just get lost on my anger tangents. I'm sorry. Just know that Pulse was banned because it made it too easy to fuse. The other cards like Pulse of Volthaven and Candlehold don't seem to have this effect on the other decks. All right, and the last card that's banned is Winter's Wail. For the first time in Flesh and Blood, a weapon was banned. I am positive that that card deserved it. I agree with a few bans: Drone of Brutality, Duskblade, and Awakening. Winter's Wail hurt so bad. Oldhim is still showing up left and right, because the archetype that character produces is just strong. But man, Winter's Wail getting removed changed the game. It forced most Oldhim players to try to fall back on one of the old tried and true card game tropes. Gain as much life as possible and just outlast your opponent. Banning Winter's Wail caused one of the most irritating forms of play to return. That's not a bad thing. And it isn't even irritating to me. I'm a very patient person in games. But I can't imagine people like playing against a 55 life character in a game where 40 life is the norm. Winter's Wail was a weapon, a one-handed Elemental Guardian weapon, that says if an ice card is pitched to attack with it, or sorry, I'm saying that terribly. Once per turn action, 3 resources, attack. If an ice card was pitched this way, Winter's Wail gains. If this hits a hero, create a Frostbite under their control. The reason this is so problematic, and I get it, to be honest with you, I just don't like it. I personally don't like banning cards to slow down Living Legend status. I agree with banning cards like Awakening, Duskblade, and Drone of Brutality because they break the way the game is meant to work. Winter's Wail didn't really do that. It was oppressive, though. I remember how frustrating it can be to get hit with this thing. So no matter what, basically what you could do is you could just block out everything your opponent was going to do and then slam a Winter's Wail back at them and make their turn even harder because it would always have that Frostbite. They would always get the Frostbite. They'd always have to pay a little more resources on their turn. It created such incremental turn-by-turn advantage that I get it. I just hate it. But just to note, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards out of Tales of Aria that are banned. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 cards in the game banned. 5 of them came from Tales of Aria. Over half of the ban list has come from Tales of Aria. This was the most powerful goddamn set. It doesn't get the respect it deserves, I feel like, from certain collectors and players. But over and over again, we see Lexi, Oldhim, and Briar being the gatekeepers to the top 8. Over and over again. Yeah, every now and then a new hero will show up on the scene and the people playing these older heroes wouldn't have a defense built yet. But as soon as the meta matures, these 3 show up again. It won't be that way for much longer. Briar's on her way out. Oldhim's on his way out. Lexi's gaining a lot of popularity, so she'll start to gain points here in a second. And I do have to remember this set came out in 2021. I've had a lot of fun with Tales of Aria. I think anybody would love to draft this set because then you can play with those banned cards. You can play with Awakening, Ball Lightning, Duskblade. You can do all this fun stuff in draft. So make sure to take advantage of that while product is plentiful. I'm building my own collection right now, and it was painful to get a hold of the Monarch cards that I needed, the rainbow foils and all that, because a lot of people stopped buying it. I'm experiencing the same thing with Tales of Aria. These were part of the Channel Fireball boom era. I swear to God, it felt like I was going to kill the game, but it just pushed through because it's just such a good game. But man, get a hold of this set. Get a hold of the staples from this set. Get a hold of all the cards you can, all the elemental cards you can. As we've seen in the past, they don't reprint rainbow foils, and some of the cards in this set are the prettiest foils I've ever seen. If you don't believe me, go crack a pack and try to find a Heaven's Claw foil, and you'll see what I mean. It's just some of the best looking art in the game. As you play this game, you'll become more familiar with all the cards that are very famous from this set. Channel Mount Heroic, Channel Lake Frigid, all these other cards. Lexi's Ranger cards themselves speak for themselves when you see them. I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody for chipping into this podcast. Again, thank you all deckheads for listening. Thanks for following me in my journey and getting this podcast going. I really want to get through all these sets, these back to basics sections. We can really start diving into the fun, amazing depth this game has. For anyone else who wants to help support me and this podcast, it's always pretty expensive. Go ahead and check out Crash Command Games. That's my store on TCG Player. It has supported all of this so far. If you're listening to this, a Patreon is up if you feel like helping support this endeavor and the store and a possible future location, all of the dream. Go ahead and subscribe to that Patreon. Check it out. I'm going to be releasing this podcast a week or so early on that to make sure you get early access. It'll also get you invites to the local servers. We play games, Rust, Valheim, all these other things. I'm hosting that for everybody and really just having a blast doing this. Thanks again, everybody. This podcast is yours.